The Badge to the Bone podcast contains adult language, mature themes, psychological nudity. Viewer discretion is advised. The opinions expressed here are ours and ours alone. Buckle up.
All right, welcome back to Badge to the Bone podcast. I'm Denny,
I'm Al.
and we have another great episode, Al.
Oh, yes.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's get her done.
I'm giving up on society, up on my family, up on your social disease. I'm giving up on the industry,
Al,
How you doing, Denny?
here we are again. I'm
Yep.
well.
Yeah.
You?
Yeah. Already. I'm looking forward to this one tonight.
Yeah, definitely a fun guest. Another individual I met at the trauma conference. You know, so many connections there. But yeah, introduce who we have tonight.
Well, we have Michael Sugrue, and we just read his book, Relentless Courage. And excellent read. We're going to dive into that. But he began his LE career actually in the Air Force. He was a security forces commissioned officer. He started there in 1998. He worked his way up into a specialized unit within Air Force Security Services called Phoenix Raven. He served as a flight leader, flight commander, senior watch officer, chief of a command post, and chief of security forces, deployed all over the U.S., Europe, Middle East, and South America. And he left the Air Force in 2004 and went into civilian policing. He joined the Walnut Creek Police Department in California, where he held a number of positions there. He was patrol officer, EVOC instructor, FTO, special investigative unit detective, undercover. He did narc stuff, public information officer, and ultimately up to patrol sergeant. He received the department's Distinguished Service Medal in 2014 for heroic and life-saving actions as part of an officer-involved fatal shooting in 2012. He ultimately left law enforcement in 2018. He is now a peer volunteer at the West Coast Post-Trauma Retreat and an ambassador for Save a Warrior. So very active in the things that we talk about.
Yeah, pretty extensive. Mike, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
And are you good with Mike, or I mean, I could call you Michael? I don't know if you like to be more formal.
I'm good either way. It doesn't matter. Mike, Michael, Sugar, whatever you want to call me. It's all good.
Sugar.
Oh, it's going to be that kind of show.
We got sugar tonight. Man,
How you doing?
man, it's so good to have you. And I saw you present at the Impact of Trauma conference here in Virginia, and man, that was awesome. That was really good.
The conference was unbelievable. I mean, the lineup of people that they had, the speakers, was unlike anything I've ever seen. I mean, usually you go to a conference, maybe there's one, two good speakers, but this conference literally had back-to-back just phenomenal speakers. So it was amazing.
Yeah, Chris does a really good job with it. He really does a good job of finding some good, solid speakers. But
Once again, rub it in that I wasn't there.
you missed it, man. I know. And you got to kick it off. And it was just like, oh, wow. Okay, so this is going to be awesome again this year. So it was great.
Well, Mike, you were definitely on that short list of people that when Denny got back, he's like, oh, we got to talk to him. So,
No, absolutely. And it's even better that we got to meet in person first, because usually when I do these podcast interviews, I never get to meet the host in person. So to actually, meet him ahead of time, and now here we are a few weeks later. So this is great.
Absolutely. So where do we want to start?
well, I literally just finished the book yesterday.
Me as
So
well.
I really want to talk about the book.
Yeah. Yeah. No, me too.
And really that the book just seems to just encompass your entire civilian law enforcement career.
Yeah,
It-
the book is something I never planned on and I never envisioned it. And I kind of have to tell you the quick background on how this all happened. So I medically retired in 2018 from post-traumatic stress injury, and honestly, at that time, I was still embarrassed and ashamed to even talk about why I had retired and to talk about the things that I'd been through, and so I was pretty private about this stuff. And what happened was, is a podcast host actually started this whole chain of events, literally set me on the path that I'm on today. His name was Danny Bird. I didn't know him. He reached out to me on LinkedIn. It turns out he was a former police officer, very big into fitness like I am, and he just asked me to be on his show. And I was like, you know what? I'm flattered, but it's not my thing. I've never done a podcast interview. I really don't want to be out there, sharing my story and my life like that. And he, kindly accepted, but he kept hitting me up and asking me, and I'll say he harassed me a little bit in a good way. And finally got me to the point where I agreed to do it. And he drove 2.5 hours to come to where I was at. And we met at the back of a restaurant. He had a video camera set up, computers. I thought we were going to have breakfast, get to know each other. And he just started asking me questions because he had to get out of there like in an hour. And I just answered everything straight from the heart. I didn't overthink things. I didn't worry about how it was going to come out. And when he aired that podcast a couple weeks later, literally I started getting messages from all over the world from people that heard my story and realized that my story was actually their story. And they started sharing with me all the same parallels of things that they had gone through, of the feelings they had experienced, on the toll of the job, on their families, on their health, on everything. And that set me off on just a series of podcasts. Eventually, I started speaking. And then right before COVID happened, this is where the book comes into play. My co-author, Dr. Shauna Springer, an amazing, amazing woman. She's a licensed psychologist. She's worked with combat veterans most of her career. So she's culturally competent. She actually understands first responders and military members. Again, she reached out to me on LinkedIn. We didn't know each other, and she just wanted to set up a call so we could kind of meet each other and see what we're doing. And she did. We started talking, and I shared my story, which is I go into great detail in the book that we did together. And she asked me at the end of it, she's like, "Have you ever thought about writing a book?" And I said, "Well, I've been asked this before." I said, "But honestly, I don't think I can get something like that done. I'm burnt out from post traumatic stress. I don't have that same drive, that motivation, that determination." And we kind of left the conversation at that. A few weeks later, she hits me back up and she's like, "Look, I can't stop thinking about your story." She's like, "I've heard hundreds and hundreds of trauma stories, but your story is going to help countless people." And she said to me, "I want to make this book happen. I want to do this book with you." And without ever meeting her in person, I said, "Let's do it." And so COVID happened. We actually started doing this project for a year, all via Zoom, never meeting in person. And the book is it's phenomenal. There's nothing out there that I know of like it, where you have a gut wrenching, gripping, true story of a first responder, but then you have the psychologist come in who backs me up and breaks everything down and explains everything in a global sense so that everybody can understand it, understand the human behind the badge.
That was a really nice kind of juxtaposition that I'd never seen in a book before, particularly like something on this subject matter, to be able to get your words and your thoughts on a particular aspect of your story and then have her come in and put that more scholarly spin on it, if you will.
Yeah, I thought it was a super compliment to have both of those. I mean, I just think for a first responder reading it, I mean, they're going to kind of understand your story, but that may be going through those things that has not gone to seek any kind of help gets to kind of get a look at what's going on and get some explanation of what was going on with you, and they can relate to that. And then someone who's just, not familiar with law enforcement or first responders altogether, they get that dual perspective, like you said. I thought that was really great how the two portions complemented each other.
Absolutely. And this book is it's proof, it's living collaboration between a culturally competent clinician or therapist and a first responder. And it shows you that we can work together, that we can get things done, that we can get healed, we can get better, we can come out the other side of this post traumatic stress injury.
Yeah, I just like the idea of there are, like you say, culturally competent counselors out there that not only are able to work with first responders, but want to work with first responders, have a drive to work with first responders. And I think her drive to get that book and putting that drive into you says a lot to get that done.
Yeah, she definitely it comes through in her writing. She definitely has that respect and that even affection, if you will,
Yeah, that's so
for the
huge.
profession.
That's so huge.
So,
Uh,
Mike, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, you're hitting it right on the head because, Doc Springer, she truly cares about the warriors, the ones in the military, our first responders, and she put her entire heart and soul into this project. And an amazing thing is that about a year after we actually published the actual book, she and I went into the recording studio and we actually recorded the audible version of this in our own voices. And that's where you can really hear the true passion come out in her voice. And it is just, there is nothing else out there like this. I mean, it literally will blow your socks off.
Oh man, so now I got to get the Audible because now I want to hear it. You know,
Oh, you do. The
I now
audible
want to
is.
hear it. I'm like, oh man, now I'm going to have to listen to it too. That's awesome.
So Mike, for folks that maybe are just hearing about your book, can you kind of walk them through a synopsis of your story?
Yeah, I'll try to make it as short as I can, but basically, at a young age, my stepfather came into my life. I consider him my father, my hero. My biological father got into drugs and alcohol. And so my stepfather and my mother really raised me. And I looked up to my stepfather from the very beginning. And he's the sole reason why I chose a life of service, why I went into the careers of both the military and law enforcement. And so in the book, I talk about the foundation of why I chose this career. I briefly talk about my time in the Air Force and the Phoenix Raven program, which a lot of people don't know about. So I kind of explain some of that. And then I go full on into, not only my career, but my personal life involving my eventual wife, my daughter, just the impact of the job day in and day out. Starting from a brand new, fresh-eyed, excited officer to the point where I get just so beat down and so depressed, honestly, and so isolated to the point where I didn't want to be here anymore. I got to the point where I literally wanted to die in the line of duty. And I started putting myself in dangerous situations, hoping I got killed. And it wasn't until a very tragic incident where one of my best friends actually tried to kill himself when I was on duty. And he saved my life because that incident, after 4 years of suffering in silence, after I'd been involved in this very traumatic, fatal shooting, going through a 4 year federal lawsuit where I ended up a defendant on trial in San Francisco, to literally just losing everything, losing my marriage, my health started to fail. And it was my best friend's action that pulled me out of this darkness and gave me the strength and courage to finally ask for help. And so once I do that, then I go into my entire journey of recovery, which involves a lot of different things, a lot of things I had no clue that were out there, a lot of resources I had never heard of. And then I talk about coming out the other side of this post traumatic stress injury and living a whole new life, a life better than I ever expected. And so this book, it gets very dark, it gets very personal, but it ends with absolute just hope and light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, there
It's
was a
very genuine as well. It's just so
Absolutely.
genuine.
and there were a lot of things that, my career experiences are different. Thank God I never had a shooting like that. But there were a number of things in there. I'm like, yep, yep, yep.
There was a lot in there that resonated. I kind of had the same how I got into service. My father was law enforcement. He was for 43 years, so that really resonated with me, and caught me on that
Yeah.
because I know what that's like to have that influence
Mm.
driving you to that. But there was a section in there when you were talking about the civil trial. And I just want to kind of hit that actually started to upset me hearing it, reading the things that were being asked in these depositions. Just I had a good friend of mine was involved in an officer involved shooting, shot and killed a guy, and he was the guy tried to long and short. The guy tried to take off and flee. They were trying to point him out the car, and then he was being drugged down the street, shoots him. Well, that prosecuting attorney charged the officer. He was charged criminally, and sitting through that trial, it was that same thing. The shit that they were asking, the stuff that they were trying to just create some sort of doubt in a jury's mind, any way they could, with any kind of ridiculousness they could throw out there. And I'm just sitting there going, "Is that a real freaking question? What the hell?" And then reading that in your book and knowing that you went through that, I mean, that got to me reading that. I'll tell you that got to me. That was just unbelievable.
Well, yeah, to be a defendant in court, literally, with everything on the line. And the facts are, not to go into great detail about my shooting because people can read about that in the book, but, the fact is that we saved a couple. I mean, literally, there was a
Yeah,
man
yeah,
with a huge butcher knife that broke into a condo, was literally stabbing this knife through their bedroom door, trying to get to them to kill them. And then he tried to kill myself and my officers. And we literally had to take his life, not only to save our lives, but the life of the poor couple that was barricaded upstairs. And this couple lived, and they went on to testify. And we were cleared by the district attorney, we were cleared by our internal investigators, but still, this federal lawsuit drug on for 4 years. The shooting happened the very end of 2012, and the trial went September 2016. And back then, that was really the start of the anti-law enforcement movement,
yep, yep.
BLM, and just there was all kinds of controversial shootings across the country at that time. And back in 2012, most people weren't actually sued or prosecuted for good officer shootings. But
Right.
now you can pretty much guarantee that if you're a police officer and you're involved in a shooting, you're going to get sued and you may get prosecuted. I mean, that's the ugly truth about what's really happening out there right now in today's society.
Oh yeah, that's
There's no arguing.
no doubt. That's so true, and it's unfortunate that it has come to that. And it's almost like for every shooting now, they're just going to throw shit against the wall and see what sticks, and see if we can get some jury or someone to buy into the bullshit we're feeding out here to get us the verdict we want. And it's just such a disservice and an injustice.
And that's with us in Virginia. I can't imagine that you even get people showing up to apply to be a cop in California.
Yeah. Wow. I mean,
Well, that's the thing is, all our departments are severely understaffed. The sad thing is, here's the reality is that because there's such a shortage of people who want to be police officers, agencies right now in California, and I'll say across the United States, are taking applicants who 10 years ago would have never gotten a first look. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
they're
Oh yeah.
they're literally,
We've had a couple conversations about that.
I mean, the thing is like they wouldn't even pass background 10 years ago or 5 years ago. And now you've got these people who have no business being cops, some have questionable criminal histories and other things in their past. And these people don't look at law enforcement as a calling like we did. They don't look at it as we're on a mission to try and save the world and help as many people as we can. These people are going, well, I never thought about this job, but the pay and benefits look like they're pretty decent. So you know what? Let me go give this a try. And
yep.
I mean, you want to talk about a domino effect? I'm going to tell you right now today that this is going to have a huge domino effect, months, years down the road. And there's going to be bad uses of force. There's going to be bad
Mhm.
shootings. There's going to be all kinds of things happening. And that's the thing is we need to support our officers. Our officers are out there on an island by themselves. They don't have support from elected officials, whether it's state, county, city. And a lot of these agency police chiefs are politicians themselves. And they're more worried about their career and becoming the next city manager than looking out for their family and their people that are going out there every single day putting their lives on the line for complete strangers.
Well, that is a perfect segue.
I mean, you right on that. I mean, we just had discussion about that, and here we are, and it's obviously that gives credibility of this issue because it just keeps coming up every time we have somebody on. We go right into that issue, and it's and you're all the way out in California and Virginia across the country, and it's the exact same issue. But man, yeah, the Chiefs politicians, yep, so many are falling right into that.
There were 3 instances that I noted in the book where your department found some way to screw you over the you know, one was you were too emotional over the shooting incident, and I'm guessing didn't believe you. The other one was an encounter with an Ocumed doc, and then the final was all the stuff that ultimately led to you retiring from the department. And it just fit with this theme, this theory that I've been talking about, that a lot of our mental health issues within the profession are driven by the profession itself, what goes on within the 4 walls of your agency headquarters, and that we're doing ourselves a disservice.
You're absolutely right. And here's the crazy thing. So when Doc Springer and I, when we did this book, when we did this project, I was honestly kind of hesitant to put in what I call admin betrayal or institutional betrayal. And we really thought that the part that was going to resonate with most people was going to be, the traumatic things that we see on the job, right? The things that we have to deal with day in, day out. But what we've come to learn since this book has been published, and, I receive messages almost every single day. And this book right now has, I believe it has 461 reviews on Amazon. Many are like multiple paragraphs long, heartfelt. And the number one thing that is resonating with readers and listeners is institutional betrayal or admin betrayal. And that is, in my humble opinion, what pushes most officers, and I'll say all first responders, firefighters, paramedics, dispatchers, police officers, that's what pushes us over the edge. It's not the horrible things that we see on the job, but when we finally need help, when we finally turn to what we thought was our family, our blue family, our red family, and we say, look, I need some help here. I can't do this anymore. And when that family turns their back on us, that is what pushes officers over the edge into suicide. And suicide is the number one killer of all first responders. We are much more likely to die by our own hands than the hands of another. And that is a fact.
And those numbers are going up.
Yep. It's not getting better.
It's not.
That is so true and absolutely, excuse me, on point. And, I'll go back just to talk about that more. I mean, your book definitely put me on like the emotional roller coaster. I'll tell you, it really did. Because I go from kind of the beginning, and you're kind of up on that positive high. You're like, oh man, that's pretty awesome, pretty cool. And then you get into this, issue of the shooting and the trauma, and then the trial, and then I'm getting upset hearing about, you're just getting drugged through the ringer over that. And then when we get to the admin betrayal and stuff, man, that's where I'm getting pissed off reading the book. And I'm like, you got to fucking be kidding me. I mean, it was unbelievable. And unfortunately, I know officers, I'm very familiar with officers that have gone through the same. And I just don't get it.
I mean, we've both heard those stories and
absolutely
seen that.
But as an agency, how do you do? I mean, you go through all this, and then you have that incident where you save lives. You do exactly what you have sworn oath to do, what you came to the job to do. You put yourself in harm's way. You saved lives, saved the people, the officers with you as well. And you go through all that, and instead of an agency going, what else can we do to help support you? What else, and even if you're struggling with it, why aren't they going, what do you need from us? What can we do to support you? What things can we do to, get you feeling better, back on track? They're not reaching it. It's like, hey, well, if you're not going to come back to work, then, I guess you just need to retire. What kind of bullshit is that?
I've got to tell you guys a quick story. So I don't usually talk about this one too often. It's not in the book, but this is going to give you like a glimpse into the reality of how it really is out there. So before we published this book, we reached out to a bunch of military leaders, law enforcement leaders across the nation, and we basically asked them if they'd be willing to read the manuscript, give us their no holds barred feedback, opinion, whatnot. So I ended up reaching out to this person has since retired, but at the time was an acting police chief for a very large police department in California. And I reached out to this person. I said, "Hey, I explained the premise of the book, and I said, I just would love for you to read this and give me your feedback and opinion." And this chief said to me, he said, "Well, I don't know if I'm the right person to read this because honestly, I don't believe this. I think a lot of officers are making this up, and I think a lot of officers are gaming the system." And he said, I'm dealing with that with people in my own agency. And I said, "Well, no, sir." I said,
Jesus.
right. So I said, "No, actually," I said, "I do want you to read this because I think this book honestly will change your perception. I think it will change your opinion. I think it will let you maybe think of things and see things that you never really thought of." And so this person agrees to read it, right? And so a couple weeks later, and we're waiting to publish. So we reach out to this chief and we're like, "Hey, we want to check in, see what you think so far." And this is the only person, by the way, out of everyone who reached out to that does this. Just I'll tell you here in a second. So he responds back and says, "Hey, I'm about halfway done. I should be done by the weekend, and I'll get back to you guys." And so we're like, "Okay, cool, thank you." Weekend happens, we don't hear anything, but I'm not going to bug the guy. I'm giving it some time. Wait a couple weeks. Send an email, real nice email, just saying, "Hey, we want to check back with you. See what your thoughts were." No response. So then another email, no response. And then I call, leave a voicemail, no response. And then I text, no response. And so now I'm getting pissed because literally we have everybody's already gotten back to us. And this is the only person that we're waiting on to publish this book. And so I don't hear back. And finally I send this chief a message. And it was not a nice message. I basically said, "Look," I said, "if my father knew how you were treating his son, he would roll over in his grave right now." And I said, "The fact that you're ghosting me like I'm some psycho ex-girlfriend and you don't have the balls to respond to me or man up and talk to me." Well, the funny thing was, this chief called me in about 30 seconds
Hmm.
after ghosting me for weeks and weeks and weeks with no response, basically like yells at me for 30 seconds and then hangs up the phone on me. Never heard from the guy again. And this is the reality, right? This is somebody who, thank God, is retired since then, but was in charge of a very large agency in a very dangerous city here in California. And he told me himself that he didn't believe in post traumatic stress.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
Mike, I gotta pose this question to you, and I've been posing it to guests as they come through. How in the hell did we get here? Because ostensibly, police chiefs were at one point patrolmen. They were at one point detectives.
Wow.
I mean,
They
theoretically,
may have wore a uniform. and sat in the car.
giant air quotes here. But it feels like the problem has gotten worse over the last decade. I mean, there's always been some level of this, but it feels like, particularly as the climate within law enforcement vis-a-vis our relationship to the public or the media or the politicians, that it too has gotten worse. Do you agree, disagree, and why do you think that might be?
It's gotten much, much worse. I agree 100%. And I think since the George Floyd incident, that really changed everything. And I remember looking back and seeing out here in California, I saw police chiefs in uniform kneeling down in front of dangerous rioters, holding huge river rocks and, breaking into stores and destroying property and literally
We
kneeling
had that
down
here.
to these people in the street. I mean, it was on the newspaper, it was on the news, and I'm thinking to myself, And you're supposed to be the head of this agency that, literally all these officers' lives are in your hands. And you're out here catering to the politicians and to the media, and you're not doing the right thing. Okay? Because here's the fact. I mean, we need to own some of this, and we need to be more transparent as police officers, as agencies. We need to bring the public in. We need to educate them on what we actually have to deal with, what we see, what we go through. We can't have this us and them mentality. I mean, we really have to work together. And I think my book, in my humble opinion, is part of the solution, because this brings down the veil, it brings down the wall, and it lets people see the humans behind the badge and the uniform, because we are just humans and we have families, we have loved ones, and yet we leave them every single day and we go out there willing to die in the line of duty for complete strangers, not wanting to. It's not part of our job, but we're willing to do it because we care that much about what we do. And that's what people need to see. And we need leaders, we need police chiefs who really support the people, but also will work in a positive way with the communities they serve, and not just get on bandwagons and try to make themselves look good in front of national media, to become the next mayor or city manager after they retire from being a police
Yep.
chief. That's what we don't need. We need true cops, true leaders who can be vulnerable, open, and honest themselves, and show what they've gone through, show the impact of the job on their relationships, on their marriages, on their health, to get rid of this perfect image they want to put forth that I'm a police chief and I'm perfect and my career is perfect, my life is perfect. No, that's bullshit. We need real leaders who are going to be open and vulnerable and talk about the humanity of what we have to see and do every single day.
They're well said.
Yeah. And those folks are out there.
There are some.
And we're blessed to have some in our state. But yeah, this problem just seems to keep growing, and it seems to be the common denominator that I'm hearing, in everyone we're talking to.
Yeah.
Whether it's officers or providers or our own personal experiences.
Yeah, it's when you talk about the chiefs or the police executives, it just when you're seeing them out there kneeling and pandering to the crowd, pandering to these mobs, that's all about just I'm going to preserve my job. I'm not going to worry about the folks that are under me or the folks that I serve, that I work for. It's all about my own self-preservation, and that is a poison.
Well, I can't even envision telling somebody I don't believe in post-traumatic stress.
Yeah, I mean, how is that even a rational thought?
You can say I don't believe in the Loch Ness monster. Not this.
Right.
I mean,
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's very disappointing to hear. Not surprising, unfortunately. I wish it was one of those things that I'd be like, oh, that's crazy. I can't believe a chief would say that. But almost from so many, you would expect it now. It seems like it's a shame, but it's just such a disservice to the men and women that work for them.
yeah. Mike, there was another thing in your book that jumped out at me that I had never heard of at all. Absolutely nothing. And it was the stellate ganglion block treatment. Did I say that
Yes.
correctly?
You did. SGB, correct.
And
Good job, Al.
I'm good with my words. So, I had heard absolutely nothing on this.
Yeah, I hadn't either.
And to the point where I was reading the book, and then I went and, went through old Google and started looking stuff up about it. And I was like, this seems like it's a miracle. Can you talk about that procedure? I mean, and how it's helped you, and because it was all brand new.
So honestly, I'd never heard of it either. And when I had that initial phone conversation with Doc Springer before we decided to do the book, That's where she first told me about stellate ganglion block. That's the first time I had heard of it. And honestly, when I heard her say this, I was like, this sounds like a bunch of bullshit. I mean, I just
Well, that was my
honestly,
first reaction. I'm going to be honest.
yeah.
Mumbo jumbo.
I was just like, I didn't say that to her, of course, but I was thinking to myself, like, this is too good to be true. Like, I've never heard, why have I never heard of this? Like, what's going on here? And so after we ended that phone conversation, I started doing my own research as well. And literally, there was a 60 Minutes episode on this years ago. You can Google it, like right now, type in 60 Minutes episode on stellate ganglion block, and it'll come up. And it has military members on there who are being interviewed and talking about this. But um, the procedure itself has actually been around for 100 years. So it was first used for pain relief, and it still is today. I mean, the procedure is very simple. It's basically an anesthesiologist who's a medical doctor uses an anesthetic, which is oftentimes used in childbirth or delivery, and they shoot it into a bundle of nerves in your neck, a very specific bundle of nerves. And they do this under imagery, so they're not just blindly doing this, but they do like a sonogram, an ultrasound, and they can see exactly where they're doing it. And for post-traumatic stress injury, they do it in a bundle of nerves that controls the primitive brain, which is the amygdala. And that's the part of the human brain that controls the fight or flight. It's those physical symptoms that you get from post-traumatic stress. And by putting the anesthetic in that bundle of nerves, it actually slows down those reactions, or it minimizes them to where you're not having these really intense physical symptoms of post-traumatic stress. Now, the procedure itself, and I've had it done, it takes literally like 10 minutes. I mean, the prep before and the prep after takes longer than the procedure itself. It's virtually painless. I didn't have any negative side effects, and I noticed instant changes. But I want to be clear here that this is not a cure for post-traumatic stress injury. The whole concept is that it allows you, by reducing these physical symptoms, it allows you to do the work that you need to do, whether that's counseling, therapy, going to like a week-long retreat, EMDR, talk therapy, group therapy, all these other things. It allows you to get focused and work on yourself. So I don't want to mislead people and think that stellate ganglion block is just going to get rid of post-traumatic stress injury. It's not going to do that. But for most people and many people, it's going to reduce those physical symptoms so that you can focus on what you need to do.
That's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I was floored. And is this procedure being done nationwide?
It is. So Doc Springer actually is the lead clinical psychologist for Stella. Stella is an organization based in Chicago by Dr. Eugene Lipoff. He's actually the one who discovered that this procedure, which was normally used for pain, could actually be used for the physical symptoms of post-traumatic stress injury. And they now train doctors all over the world. I mean, Australia, I think the UK, all over the United States on how to do this procedure. And so more and more doctors are starting to do this. And you can literally probably just go in your Google and say, anesthesiologists performing stellate ganglion block near me. And you're probably going to get a list of clinics or doctors who are performing this procedure.
Man, so, it seems like a lot of, the therapy and counseling, different things you do, it always seems that, you made a good point that it's not going to, cure it or fix it. It's not a one-shot deal. And then there's other things you got to do. But I've noticed that most folks that do well and start to recover, it's more entailed. There's no one item that takes care of it all. It's usually a combination of things, whether it's counseling and medication or peer support and counseling, or but it's a combination of things. And to know that that's out there to help you be able to do the other things as well, that's awesome.
Yeah, and we know
Absolutely.
that they're the physiological component
Yeah.
that comes with stress and PTSD issues, trauma response, and whether you're managing that through a mild antidepressant or you're going all the way to the SGB.
Yeah. I mean, because it makes me wonder, how many out there are and I'm a huge advocate for counseling and stuff, but sometimes, folks aren't getting what they want out of it. And it makes, wonder, well, are they dealing with the other items that are not letting them focus on that counseling and get the benefit of the counseling? So I think that's a great resource.
Yeah. Oh, I was just, again, I'd never heard of this before, and it just, and like you said, it's not a cure, but it's a major help. And
Absolutely. It can be life changing. I mean, instantly life changing for many people. And you already said it, but and for myself included, and I know this from the volunteer work that I do, but most people that recover from post traumatic stress injury, it's a combination of different things that work for different people. There is no one single thing that works for everybody.
Yep.
And in fact, EMDR that I brought up, I've seen that work time and time again for many people, but for
Yep.
me personally, it didn't do anything. And so people need to realize that when you try these things, and you have to be open to trying new things, to keep that open mind and not put all your eggs in one basket and think that, hey, I tried this one thing, it didn't work, so I'm done. I'm not gonna try anything else. I'm just gonna, keep doing what I'm doing. I'm gonna drink alcohol. I'm gonna use my prescription meds or illicit, meds or drugs or whatever, and I'm just gonna numb myself and try to get through this, as opposed to putting in the work. And I want people to know that it's not easy. Recovery from post traumatic stress injury for me was a long road. It took a lot of work. There was a lot of ups and downs. There was good days and bad days. But I'm living proof that you can get through it and that you can come out the other side of this injury.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point of trying different things. You can't put your eggs in one basket. I think that's so true. And I think a lot of people do get wrapped up in that. They'll go, okay, well, I'll go see this counselor, or I'll go to this peer support session. And then why didn't get anything out of it? So see, I told you this shit doesn't work.
hmm
And they fall back into that rut. But you do have to keep working at it. And you have to find that combination of things that work for you where you're getting the results. And it is, man, wildly different for everybody, it seems.
It is. And there's things that I still do today to maintain my physical health and my mental health. There's things that I do every single day that are part of my routine that allow me to live this life. And like you said, it's work, it's maintenance. I mean, we go to the gym and we work on our physical bodies. Well, we need to do the same with our brains and our mental health. And there's things that we need to do to maintain that health.
That's very true too. It is a maintenance. I feel like it never really will truly go away, but it's something you have to maintain.
You'll never be the same person that you were before post traumatic stress injury, but I can take that a step further and say you're never going to be the same person you were before you signed up to be a first responder. I mean, the job changes us
That's true.
who we are as a
Yep.
person. And so, but I believe that today I'm actually a better person than I was. I look at things differently. I have empathy, I have compassion, I have understanding. I don't judge people. I used to be so black and white. If you broke the law, I didn't care what your circumstances were, why you did what you did. And now I look at things like alcoholism, addiction. I look at it totally different because I know so many first responders that are struggling with these same issues because it's their coping mechanism to deal with it.
Now you mentioned you do some volunteer work as well.
Yes.
What kind
So
of stuff?
I actually went through the West Coast Post Trauma Retreat as a client back in May of 2017. And that program saved my life. Amazing, amazing program. It's about a week long. It's a residential retreat only for first responders to deal with post traumatic stress injury. It started out here in California many years ago, but now there's locations all across the United States. And it's all run by volunteers. You've got clinicians and therapists, you have chaplains, and you have people like myself who have already gone through the program, some 6 months earlier, some 15 years early ago. And they go back and they give back to this program because that's how much we believe in it. And every time I go back, I literally see lives being saved. I mean, they say it's magic, right? I mean, it's what happens there. It's unbelievable. In just a week, how literally your whole life can change.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Is it just in California?
No, there's locations all over the United States. So I would recommend, and we have all these resources listed in the back of our book, but for people that are listening or watching this interview right now, just go on the internet and type in First Responder Support Network. And I'll say that again, FRSN, or First Responder Support Network. And the West Coast Post Trauma Retreat is part of that. And they've got listings of locations of, what the retreat is and all kinds of resources. So definitely check that out.
Absolutely. We've talked about how we got here, Al, and I think things like this are how we start to try to reverse this. Mike, like things like your book being out there, the resources that are out there, putting those things out there, helps walk this back some. It helps the folks that are still out there. That's why I think it's so important to read books. It's so important for first responders like you to put their story out there. I find that is the most helpful. That's always been the most helpful for me through all of mine, is hearing all the other stories of what folks went through and how they made it out on the other side, because it gives you the hope. But it also is, well, I'm not the only person that has had to deal with this, or I'm not the only person that has been ashamed to talk to anybody about this stuff. And then you having that genuine, honest account and having the courage to put that stuff out there, I think that truly is a huge help for those out there struggling.
It is. And the fact is, I'm not special, I'm not unique, and nothing that I've been through is. I'm just willing to talk about it. And we all have a story. I mean, both of you have a story. Everyone listening to this interview right now has a story. And we just need to get to a place where we change the culture, where we can feel comfortable and confident in a trusted environment that we can share these stories with each other. Because, I ask myself this day in and day out, but why is it as police officers, I can trust my brothers and sisters to have my back to the fullest? If there's an active shooter, if there's some domestic violence call, some huge bar brawl, right? I know they're going to have my back. I know they're willing to die to try and protect me or save me if necessary. But why is it I can't turn to any of them and have a conversation about my feelings or my emotions or about the impact of the shit that I'm seeing on the job, and then the resulting effects on my family and my marriage and my personal life? Like, why is it that we just can't have these conversations at work? I mean, we trust each other with our lives, but yet we can't talk about it. And then when I was in recovery, that's where, for the very first time in my life, I started going to these meetings I didn't know about. I started seeing a culturally competent therapist, and I started meeting tons of other first responders who were sharing their stories. And I'm like, well, this is how it should have been all along. And I wouldn't have gotten to this point. I wouldn't have gotten so messed up, because it would have just been a normal part of our routine and conversations where we're just getting the stuff off our chest and off our shoulders, and we're not keeping it bottled up inside.
Yep. That is so true.
I do think we've gotten a lot better.
That yes.
Now, maybe that's
Than it
just
was.
my own observation, because I look around, I look in the mirror, and I go, there's a lot of us that got problems, and there's a lot of us that
No doubt.
will talk about our problems to each other, even our worst problems.
Sure.
But I go back, I mean, I did over 25 years, and I go back to the academy, and you touch on this in the book, how we need to be in the basic academies talking about these issues in a positive way. Maybe the first, certainly not at my academy, there was no discussion of this kind of thing in the academy environment 25, 26 years ago. First decade or so of my career, I don't think this ever. I mean, you just nothing,
No.
zero. And it's really, as I got closer to 50, that, it came out more. And partly that was when you started to see, the wheels come off the cart all around you. Yourself included. and the wheels start coming off the cart, and you're like, what the hell is going on?
Right.
They didn't tell me about this 20 years ago.
Right.
But you're right. You said that. I'm glad you said that in the book because it really it needs to be a part of the basic curriculum.
I think you use your catchphrase, or I call it your catchphrase, is that smash the stigma. And I think,
Absolutely, because that stigma is what prevents
yeah,
people from talking about this or asking for help. Because, I thought I was alone for so long. I thought something was wrong with me. I thought nobody would understand me, and I thought that it was weakness and shameful to admit any of this or to talk about my feelings or my emotions or the impact of what I was seeing. But I later realized, and it took years of recovery, that me asking for help was the strongest, bravest thing I ever did. It was nothing on the streets, it was nothing in the military, but it was literally saying, look, I can't do this anymore, and I need somebody to help me out here.
well, I think things like your book and these conversations we're having right now are that path of smashing that stigma. That's going to be huge, but I think that's part of the equation to get there.
Yeah, and I think we are getting there. It's a slow process. God knows we're not getting help from our elected officials and our admin, but I think we as a community of professionals are doing a pretty damn good job now
Getting there.
getting there.
Things are
But
getting
Mike,
better, but lots
yeah,
more work to do.
but Mike, thanks so much for your book. For taking this step to put that out. I mean, I'm thanking you personally for putting that together. It's definitely pretty tremendous. Great read. I hope everybody listening is going to snag a copy of that. But we talked about it earlier how the Doc Springer, her part in there complemented it so well. But thank you for getting that together, because it's things like that. It's first responders like you that are making the effort, that are going to drive this bus to help everybody else get through it. It really is. So, I mean, from me personally, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is my mission in life. This is my purpose, and none of this happened by chance. It all happened for a reason, and I can look back, and I wouldn't change anything that I've been through because it got me to where I'm at today. And this is my purpose. It's spreading this word, it's smashing that stigma, and it's normalizing this conversation.
Mike, can we expect a follow up book from you
Not
anytime soon?
not at this time. What I'm hoping for, honestly, is
Mhm.
that at some point this book gets turned into a screenplay, maybe a Hollywood movie. If Denzel Washington is out there, listening, or director of Training Day, or Jake Gyllenhaal, or director of
Yeah,
End of Watch, two of my favorite movies.
there you go.
Um, I'm hoping someday, it gets turned into a movie so that this can get a bigger audience, so that everyone can see the real human side behind what we do and what we see. And this is going to help change perceptions. It's going to bring us closer together, and it's going to let our communities understand, the heroes out there in uniform, putting it on the line every single day.
Well, I'm not going to lie to you. After I got done with the book, I said this would make a really good movie. So, I
Well,
mean,
listen to the
you are
Audible.
out in California, so I mean, you
Who knows, right?
hopefully you get that done. But yeah, I think you're right. It's something that everybody needs to see, and I think film is the medium that's gonna reach the biggest audience.
Absolutely. And the beautiful thing is right now, like I said, that Audible's out. This past Monday made it 12 weeks since it released, and the Audible is still the number one new release. And the Audible, it's going to blow your freaking socks off right now. I'm going to tell you, because it is not like a normal Audible. It's like you feel like you're watching a movie. I mean, you're going to hear the emotion. You're going to hear just the tenseness. I mean, you're going to hear the emotion. You're going to hear the passion. It's just from both Doc and I, it's straight from our heart and soul. And so, yeah, you know what? Read the book. But for people that don't have time to read, you're out there driving the patrol car, you're commuting to and from work, you're at the gym, pop in that Audible, and I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to feel like you're there. It is amazing.
Well, y'all did a great job with it. You really did. Relentless Courage, outstanding book. We thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm glad we got to meet. I'm glad I got to meet you in person. it's awesome when the whole time reading the book, I'm like, man, I was standing face to face with this guy right here. And it was just awesome. And I was so excited to have you on, but it was awesome. Thanks so much for being on.
It's my honor. Thanks for what you guys do. Like I said, I love the show, and everyone needs to listen to it. So you guys are doing great things. Keep it up.
Thank you so much. Mike, how can our listeners find you online?
So I'm on pretty much every platform out there. I tried to avoid it, but I gave in December, and I even got on TikTok and
Oh,
Threads, and I
the
know I
Chi-Coms
don't
found you, didn't they?
right, yeah. I don't do videos though. I don't do dancing videos, nothing like that. But I'm on
Kittens and ice
Facebook.
buckets.
Yeah, right. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Threads, Parlor, Truth, TikTok, you name it. Just type in Sergeant Michael Sugrue, Sugrue. You can find me on there. Send me a message. I check my platforms every day, multiple times a day. I will definitely get back to you.
Awesome.
That's great.
Thanks
Great.
so much. Really, again, I can't thank you enough. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mike.
Take care.
Take care.
You too. All right.
That was a good conversation.
Man, it really was. It really was. It was so great to have him on.
I enjoyed the book,
I did.
and I think any of us that are on the job or have been on the job definitely need to read it. More importantly, I think average people that have never been on the job need to read that book.
Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Particularly because it has that dual perspective from the first responder. So they get that in-your-face perspective of what he had to deal with and what first responders in general deal with. Very genuine, doesn't hide anything,
No.
very open. And then right after you get the counselor, the therapist view of what's going on and what they're experiencing and giving you a real good perspective of what he was dealing with.
Explaining it in a a professional,
Yes.
clinical way, but at the same time not keeping it human and approachable and
Yes.
and empathetic.
Yes. Yes.
So all yes, that I had never read a book structured like that.
No,
before.
neither did I. And I didn't know. I didn't know at all that it was structured like that until, of course, I dove into it, and I was like, okay, well, that's pretty cool. And like say, her perspective was really good. She didn't like over shrink it or anything like that.
No,
It was,
and she didn't.
no, yeah, not at all. It was really, really good. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. Not only is it a huge value for first responders, but man, those not in the profession, or if you have, a family member, a close friend, a loved one, a spouse, brother, sister.
Oh, absolutely. I would
Man,
say if you're a spouse,
Yeah.
if you're a parent,
Yes.
this is a book you probably need to read.
And I should have told him that it really is a value in so many hands. Not just that's what's so good about it. That's what I like so much about it. Is it's not just a first responder read, but
No.
man, a family, like you say, a parent, they need to read that. A spouse, they need to read that.
And I really do hope that he's successful in bringing this to film in some way.
That would be cool.
I think it would just be. It's a story that everyone's going to appreciate. I think it'll do really well.
I think it would do really well, and anything we can get out there to mass audiences on what's going on in the first responder community is a win, is important, is progress, is a move in the right direction. So yeah, that would be great. I do hope that happens for him.
Yeah, so again, the book is Relentless Courage, Winning the Battle Against Frontline Trauma by our guest, Michael Sugrue and Shauna Doc Springer. The book is available at all of your preferred retailers, Amazon, Audible, Now I'm going to definitely check it out on
Yeah,
Audible.
so now he said that, and I'm like, now shit, I got to listen to it now because now he kind of got wrapped in. We want to hear, when you read it, you're kind of adding in what your interpretation is. I definitely want to hear that, real, genuine, like you said, the
emotion.
the emotion.
Right.
Exactly right.
Right.
So now I'm kind of, all right, I'm going to have to listen to it too.
But definitely, those of you, if you liked what you heard tonight, go out, pick up a copy, and definitely leave a review.
Yes.
Let Mike know what you thought. But encourage it again. The book is Relentless Courage: Winning the Battle Against Frontline Trauma.
Awesome. So, yeah, good stuff. But Al, that's going to wrap us up.
I think it does.
Where can they find us in the meantime?
Well, they can find us at badgetothebone.com. They can also find us on Facebook at Badge to the Bone.
Also, shoot us an email at wearebadgetothebone@gmail.com. Make sure to like and follow us. And until then, be safe.
And be well.